Today I'm going to be addressing the 7 deadly innocent frauds of economic policy, written by Stephen Mosler, Warren Mosler, I think Mosler, Warren Mosler, excuse me, Warren Mosler, the high prophet of MMT, neo-Keynesian modern, so-called modern monetary policy, which is not modern, but it is monetary policy. So they list number one, the government must raise funds through taxation or borrowing in order to spend. In other words, government spending is limited by its ability to tax or borrow. This is listed as one of the frauds. In a sense, that's correct. There is a third option, which is to print the money, a popular option with governments these days. But printing the money is no better than taxing or borrowing. Actually, I don't know if it's worse per se, but it's on par at any rate. It, because so what happens when the government finances deficit spending through creating money? Okay, well, what would happen if I were to counterfeit $20 and go out and buy a meal with it? Uh, I would enrich myself to the amount of one meal. Let's say I get a burger and fries and a Coke for $20. So I've gotten that meal, but you don't get something from nothing. So somebody has to be one meal poorer. And it's not the restaurant that I purchased from, because they've got the $20 I counterfeited, which we're going to assume it's a perfect fake. They're not going to get caught. They're going to be able to spend it. In fact, they've profited to the tune of their profit margin. Um, so so by counterfeiting, what you're really doing is you're stealing from everybody who has cash. You're stealing, a fraction, a tiny fraction of 1 cent from everybody who has a cash balance. Because as new money is created, the old money becomes worth less. So, so yes, the government can finance deficits through creating money through the banking system. However, what they're really doing is just taxing anybody who has savings, who has cash. And so it's still a tax. Like the government is still being paid for by somebody, which is what a tax is, right? Um, but it's one that's not it's not based on income or property or consumption. It's based on how much you save. So it penalizes thrift. Anybody can avoid the inflation tax by not holding cash, by not saving money. Okay. Which is one thing that inflationists sort of celebrate about inflation. But there's a big downside to that because people saving money is very important for long-term economic growth. If you want to start a new business, you need to borrow the money from somebody. Uh, and one thing you can do is you can borrow the money from people that have saved it, right? But if they haven't saved it, you can't do that. With, two, with government deficits, we are leaving our debt burden to our children. Um, I don't see how they can argue that. I mean, just look at how the debt has been handled. Like the only argument I could see against that is if it was paid off before the next generation. But we don't do that anymore. We just accumulate more and more debt every year. Debt which is so-called owed. I mean, it's not really a legitimate owing, but owed to the state by our children, yeah, and they have to pay it. I mean, I'll be interested to read their argument later on. This is just the first 7. I'm just giving my initial reaction to it. Maybe I'll, once I've gone through and read the whole thing, maybe I'll have more to say there. But yeah, that's what government debt. You're leaving a debt burden to your children. Yes, to other people in the country. Government budget deficits take away savings. So there's a crowding out effect. If the government is borrowing all the money, then there's less loanable funds available for other people. Actually, I mean, there's a more direct attack on savings because the government deficits, when they're financed through inflationary monetary policy, where the money's just created and then they're borrowed, causes inflation, right? What I've just been talking about, and as I said, you can avoid the inflation tax by not having any cash, by putting all your money in the stock market, consuming it, buying gold, whatever. If you don't have cash, you don't have, you can't be, you can't suffer from inflation. Like you can't be subject to the inflation tax. Well, what is savings but cash balances? People holding cash. That's what savings is. Um, I guess you could argue like investments are savings in a sense. Like you could save money by just putting it in the stock market. Um, like you're investing it, but it's also sort of a way to save it. Um, just like uh, like a high interest savings account is an investment and it's savings. Um, so, but yeah, government budget deficits, when they're financed through inflation, absolutely take away or discourage savings. Um, and and you can just look at the savings rate, which has been plummeting. Uh, okay, number 4, Social Security is broken. Again, I mean, what do they mean by broken? It's definitely broken in the sense of it's like a horrible, horrible program. The recipients tend to be much wealthier than the people paying in. And it's not like a retirement account. It's wealth redistribution from the young to the old. And the old are often, it's not means tested. Uh, the old are often much wealthier than the people that are putting money into it. I think too, like we're sort of beyond that now. We don't really need it anymore. You get a lot more bang from your buck if you invest your money on your own. Plus, like, what about the people that end up dying young? You know, they're forced to put their money into Social Security, and they don't get anything out of it. And there's people that don't put much in but get a lot out of it. Um, yeah, it's a pretty awful system. And the other thing is, I know people have been saying this for a long time, but like the government's what, 25, 35 trillion dollars in debt. So you really want to give them your pension and say, hold on to it for me. I mean, I don't know if the money's going to be there. So far, they've always managed to find a way, but uh, the trade. Okay, this is a good one. The trade deficit is an unsustainable imbalance that takes away jobs and output. Okay, I am on board with MMT. Warren Mosler and I are finding a rare moment of agreement. The trade deficit does not matter. It does not matter. So I agree with number 5. That is a deadly innocent fraud of economic policy or economic theory. I think it would be more accurately. Okay, number 6. Our moment of agreement is ended. We need savings to provide the funds for investment. Yeah, um, that's absolutely true. Now, you could argue like you don't necessarily need consumer savings. You could have like corporate savings, but I don't really agree with that. I mean, yeah, that's basically what we do now in Canada, and it works more or less. But I think the other way, which is where you have consumer savings, and then consumers sort of reinvest that into the economy, into businesses, especially small businesses, is much better than just being like a nation of employees and consumers for big corporations, a nation of malls. I like more like rugged entrepreneurship, small business. I mean, I like big business too. I'm not anti big business, but I think the economy is a little healthier when consumers are saving and reinvesting that money in the economy, and they have more of an ownership share, and we're less just like strictly consumers and employees that have to go out and blow our paychecks every week. Not that there's anything wrong with that. That's a valid lifestyle too. But yeah, savings are the foundation of a healthy economy. Consumer savings, and necessarily, uh, like your income is either consumed or saved. Even if you go and invest it, like a few hours after you get the money, you're still saving it first. Like, but savings, that's where funds come from for investment. Absolutely. There might be other sources, foreign investment, corporate investment, whatever. But consumer savings, foundational to a healthy economy, which is why inflation is so bad. It's a bad thing that higher deficits today mean higher taxes tomorrow. That's sound, completely sound. So yeah, Mosler, as usual, just completely out to lunch. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm gonna read through the rest of this, and we'll see exactly what he doesn't know what he's talking about. I just wanted to give my initial reactions to the 7 deadly frauds, and then we'll get into it, and I'll probably come back and do an overview at the end. Peace out, YouTube.